Just last week, I purchased the Insta360 X5, my first ever 360 camera, and honestly, I'm enjoying it way more than I expected. The whole shoot first, frame later workflow feels incredibly liberating, especially for casual travel or walking videos. I can just hit the record button and forget about the camera, knowing I'm capturing everything around me no matter where the action happens. That said, capturing 360 footage does come with some compromises in image quality. So to figure out which camera I'll be packing for my next trip, I've been testing it against two other cameras I own, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 and the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro, looking at things like image quality, flexibility, ease of handling, and low light performance. The first test I ran was a simple outdoor daytime shoot to get a sense of each camera's overall look. In this comparison, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 delivered the best looking footage, with natural colours and a clean, detailed image. On a 4K display, the Osmo Action 5 Pro's footage didn't look quite as sharp. Note that I usually use the horizon balancing mode for walking shots, which crops in even more than rock steady, so I am losing a bit of effective resolution here. Moving on, the Insta360 X5 actually surprised me, delivering better image quality than I expected. However, a couple of issues stood out on closer inspection. First, because of the extremely wide-angle 360 lens, there's still noticeable lens distortion in some shots, even after de-warping in Insta360 Studio. Zooming in more to combat this distortion will only further degrade resolution, since with this camera you're always cropping in from the 360-degree 8K source. Second, the X5's high dynamic range wasn't as strong as the other two cameras. For example, in this scene with direct sunlight, the sky looks blown out. In comparison, the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro preserved more detail in the sky. Here again, you can see the X5 struggling to properly expose scenes with high dynamic range. It's worth noting that the X5 does have an active HDR mode, but it's only available in up to 5.7K resolution and not at the maximum 8K resolution I want to record in. Finally, I'll add that I personally prefer the color output from the DJI cameras. However, I won't dive any further into this since I've only used the X5's standard color profile so far. Going back to the Osmo Pocket 3, which easily came out on top in this test, there was one minor drawback I noticed with walking footage. The up and down bobbing was slightly more noticeable compared to the other cameras, primarily because of its narrower field of view, which makes the same vertical movements bigger relative to the rest of the scene. While the Insta360 X5 delivered the weakest image quality, it stands alone as the only 360 camera here, and that brings an invaluable advantage, the ability to capture everything around you and reframe later in post. This is incredibly useful for travel or vlogging, where you're often too caught up in the moment to focus on perfectly framing every shot and sequence. Even if you're just walking on autopilot, you can still create fairly dynamic edits later on that feel far more engaging than footage stuck facing forward the entire time. Plus, the camera will always catch those spontaneous, unplanned moments you might have been slow to react to or just missed entirely. By comparison, shooting with the Osmo Pocket or the Osmo Action demands a more deliberate, hands-on approach. Recording on autopilot with these cameras only leaves you with basic walking clips that might be difficult to make use of. Out of the three, the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro is the most straightforward to use. You just pop it on a grip or selfie stick and point it where you want. But since it doesn't have a gimbal like the Pocket 3, you have to rely completely on your wrist, your arm, or your whole body to keep your subject in frame. By comparison, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3's gimbal head makes certain shots easier. Another plus is that the Pocket 3's grip is part of the device itself, giving it a smaller footprint than the Osmo Action or X5 paired with a separate grip, which is generally how you'd set them up for comfortable walking shots. That said, while the Pocket 3 is super comfortable to record with, its delicate gimbal mechanism means you do have to be more careful when taking it out or packing it away. It's a small thing, but don't underestimate the luxury of being able to chuck your camera into your bag without a second thought. The Insta360 X5 really gives you the best of both worlds here, complete freedom in how you hold the camera, while being rugged enough that you don't have to stress about accidentally damaging it. Another thing I like is how it frees you from constantly checking your shot. With the DJI cameras, I found myself paying more attention to the screen to ensure the framing was okay, which can sometimes even be challenging in bright sunlight or at awkward angles. With the X5, you can get away with a set it and forget it mindset, letting you focus on what's happening around you without having to worry as much about the camera. For the final test, I compared how each camera performed in low light situations, traditionally a challenge for compact cameras due to their smaller sensors. It probably won't come as a surprise that the Osmo Pocket 3 absolutely decimated the competition here. Not only does it benefit from the biggest sensor, but its gimbal mechanism means it can get away with shooting at slower shutter speeds while still keeping the footage stable. Both the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro and the Insta360 X5 fell well short of the Osmo Pocket 3, but were still perfectly usable in scenes like this with plenty of artificial light. However, in true low light conditions, both of these cameras struggled quite a bit. The resulting footage might look acceptable on a smaller screen, but it really falls apart when viewed in 4K on a large display. For comparison, here's a similar scene captured with the Osmo Pocket 3. One specific issue I noticed with the Osmo Action 5 Pro was fairly heavy jittering when walking in low or medium low light conditions. This seems to be caused by how it balances shutter speed with its electronic image stabilization. In the same scenario, the Insta360 X5 actually handled things noticeably better, avoiding the significant jitter seen in the Osmo Action 5 Pro's footage. So between the Osmo Action 5 Pro and the Insta360 X5, I think the Osmo Action 5 delivered a nicer overall image, but it occasionally suffered from unpredictable jitter when walking and shooting in full auto. The X5 on the other hand had a slightly cartoony look that just wasn't as visually pleasing, but for walking footage it was less prone to erratic jitter from its electronic image stabilization. So after evaluating the three cameras on different criteria, what do I think about each camera? Well, to me the Osmo Action 5 Pro feels like the classic and dependable choice for vlogging. It doesn't necessarily stand out for any unique feature, but it's a compact, rugged workhorse with solid battery life that handles almost any situation you throw at it. However, for walking videos or vlogs where you're not dealing with extreme action or water, the Osmo Pocket 3 feels like the better pick. Its gimbal provides several benefits and it has far superior low light performance. That said, you do have to handle it more carefully, and its fixed, narrower field of view compared to the other cameras might be a drawback depending on the style of video you're after. Meanwhile, the Insta360 X5 offers a completely different shooting experience, which means you really have to figure out what kind of shooting you prefer. If you're a simple hit the record button and walk around guy like me, you might appreciate the flexibility in post to create a more dynamic edit, even if the image quality isn't as solid. And if your goal is to capture immersive memories that truly take you back in time, there's something pretty amazing about being able to revisit that moment in 360 and look around, which is something standard cameras won't let you do.